Good day and welcome to the Lillyroddyshow, coming to you from the LRS studios here in Houston, Texas. And it's always so good to have you join me as I share my astrological views about what's going on in our world. Thank goddess the weather is just a bit cooler and drier here in Houston. We're always happy for any relief by the time the end of August rolls around. This week, we'll be looking at the highlights for the week of September the 6th through September the 12th. And as I said last week, we'll be talking about the stock market, especially with this huge drop that just occurred on August 24th, Monday, with the moon moving through Sagittarius. If you would like to get in contact with me, you can always reach me at lillyroddyshow@aol.com, lillyroddyshow.com, or find us on Twitter, Pinterest, or Facebook. And if you sign on to those, you will get my daily forecast. I will also post those on our YouTube channel, and please subscribe if you haven't. Let's look at this upcoming week, September the 8th through September the 12th, 2015. This Sunday, September the 6th, Venus goes stationary direct. Venus has been retrograde in Leo since the middle of July. Venus will not be up to speed until after September the 25th. This Venus in Leo retrograde is supposed to have stimulated us to look back fondly at relationships from the past, how to improve our current relationships, and taking a good strong look at our own views about our own self-esteem. With Venus retrograding, it's not been a good time to make commitments to new relationships, new types of investments, or buying new furniture. We don't have much of an energetic opening after Venus goes direct because Mercury will be going retrograde on September 13th through October 15th. Because of that, making clear decisions will probably have to be put on hold until after October the 15th, 2015. On Tuesday the 8th, we have Mars trine Uranus, which should boost our day some and make us feel a bit more excited about living. On Wednesday, however, Mercury squares Pluto for the first of 3 times because of the upcoming Mercury retrograde. Mercury squares Pluto can activate the detective or the paranoia inside all of us. This is a very intense day, and we need to be careful about what we say because people will take us literally. Overall, the week is not too bad, and we don't have any long void moons during this whole week of September the 6th through the 12th. So we should have a good time, and we should roll along fairly easily, considering some of the energies that are going on around us. And let's just segue with that right into the stock market. Now, I want to talk about what's going on with the Dow Jones. For the people that want to follow along, the chart I used for the Dow Jones is July 3rd, 1884, 9:56 a.m., New York City, of course, in New York. And in that chart, the Dow is, is 15 degrees Virgo rising. Sorry, I just swallowed and obviously didn't. Let's try that again. And in that chart, the Dow is at 15 degrees Virgo rising. Mars is also at 15 degrees Virgo in the 12th house. The Dow also has the midheaven at 13 Gemini and Saturn at 17 Gemini in that 10th house. As you can see, the Dow has a very strong Mars-Saturn square. Often the language of the Dow is about stops, limits, selling short, or other various terms that come from the strong Saturn square Mars in the Dow chart. And of course, Saturn's in Gemini in the Dow chart. The Dow itself is also a Cancer sun sign with Venus in Cancer retrograde. And you'll notice that the drop we had in the market occurred with Venus retrograde, of course in Leo, not in Cancer. The Dow also has Uranus in Virgo in the first house, which accounts for those big wide swings that we always see in the Dow. And that Uranus in Virgo in the first house does form a wide square to Saturn in the 10th. And one other thing I almost forgot to mention, the Dow has Pluto in Gemini at 1 degree and 35 minutes. And that's a real big trigger point for the Dow. When things hit that sort of 1 degree point, the Dow shifts. So you can obviously see that the Dow chart has a lot of mutable signs sort of running the show. One thing that I've noticed when the planets move through mutable signs, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, or Pisces, the market seems to be the most affected. And usually any planets in mutable signs tend to support the growth in the market, except for Saturn, as you can well imagine. When Saturn enters a mutable sign, approximately every 7.5 years, the Dow Jones has a correction phase. I've looked up the history of the Dow and its extremes, ups or downs, and when Saturn enters a mutable sign, the Dow goes through a correction. Of course, we all do some element of a correction phase whenever Saturn is influencing our charts. Here are the more recent times with Saturn entering a mutable sign and the market going through a correction phase. Saturn was in Gemini from August of 2000 until June of 2003. Saturn was in Virgo September 2007 until October of July 2010. And now Saturn's going to move into Sagittarius December 2014. That's when Saturn moved into Sag, and will be in Sag until December 2017. Each of these times there was some sort of correction. Now, it does help the overall market when Saturn moves into a mutable sign if there were other mutable planets in mutable signs. I know that won't override the correction phase of Saturn, but it does help to keep the market supported, and it tends to recover more quickly. An example of the market doing well for a long, long time was in the 80s, 82, 83, as both Uranus and Neptune moved through Sagittarius. In 1986 and 87, Saturn moved through Sag, just as it is now, and of course that's when we had our first, I think it was called Black Monday in December of 87. Now, Pluto entered the sign of Sagittarius in early 1995, but really came on strong in 1996. This was another long extended period of the market continuing to move forward. Pluto was in Sagittarius until 2008, when she moved into Capricorn. As Pluto was in Sag during that time, Saturn moved through Gemini in September 2000 through 2003, as I'd mentioned earlier. And of course, in September 2001, Saturn opposed Pluto in the sky, as we all experienced 9/11, and the stock market crashing and ultimately closing. Now, this was a very specialized time, because as Saturn was opposing Pluto in the sky, Pluto had been conjuncting the midheaven while Saturn was squaring Mars and the Saturn in the Dow chart. Now that is a very active picture, and of course we're just not going to see that again, and especially in our lifetimes, because it'll be approximately 250 years before Saturn. It'll be a little bit longer than that. About 258 years before Pluto re-enters Sagittarius. So it'll be a very long time before humans, as we experience that energy. Now let's look at what's currently going on. Saturn did enter Sagittarius in late December of 2014. During that time, Saturn got up to 4 degrees of Sag before she went retrograde in March of 2015. This was also the time when Saturn began to square Neptune and the price of gasoline at the barrel began to drop. I interpreted that this time with Saturn in Sag, along with Neptune in Pisces, that we would have ups and downs in the Dow, but there'd be no real growth. And that did seem to hold true until we got to August the 2nd, when Saturn went direct, and of course August 2nd, 2015. Also in August, you need to remember these things, Jupiter moved into Virgo, another mutable sign, on August 11th. I would want to believe that because we have Neptune in Pisces and Jupiter in Virgo until August of 2016, that's Jupiter in Virgo, until 2016, that we should have enough recuperative powers within the Dow to keep it from falling too far. I speculate the Dow will probably drop to maybe as low as 13,000 during the worst of the correction phase. And to give myself a little hedge room, I do think the Dow could go down as low as 12,000, but I don't think it'll be any lower than that, even at its lowest point. And because there is strength in the market, meaning there are other planets in mutable signs to hold up the energy, I think that will help to offset some of the correction phase. Now, on August 24th, 2015, when the market did its most recent drop, the Sun and Jupiter were at 1 Virgo, squaring Pluto of the Dow. Remember, we have Pluto at 1 Gemini in the Dow, so they were both squaring it. It was a huge drop, a very Jupiterian kind of experience. And these are always sensitive points in the chart of the Dow because of Pluto at 1 Gemini. I do expect the correction phase to continue, that means Saturn moving to Sag, to get stronger as Saturn enters Sag for its 2-year visit. Now, Saturn will enter Sagittarius, I have my notes here, I want to make sure I say that, on September the 17th, 2015. So that's really when the energy will be very obvious. Now, Saturn appears to be especially strong in the chart of the Dow, January, February, and April, May of 2016. I would expect that we would see either strong drops and probably some uptake because of the other planets, but I would expect that to be a more volatile time. And of course, I think it'll all get stronger as soon as Saturn enters Sag. We will also experience some strong correction phase from Saturn October through December of 2016. I'm more concerned about the Dow correction phase being stronger in the latter part of the latter half of 2016 because then Jupiter moves out of Virgo into Libra and will only have Neptune in Pisces to offset some of the Saturn aspects. And of course, as Saturn moves through a mutable sign, it makes a lot of contact with the Dow chart. I mean, literally, it will conjunct Saturn and Sag. It will oppose Pluto. It will then square Mars, square the ascendant, conjunct the 4th house, and oppose Saturn. And that'll be happening kind of mostly in 2016. So it's a lot of activity, but it's the latter half, as I was saying, Jupiter moves out of Virgo, and then we don't have that same sort of strength. Traditionally, the market always moves into some sort of recovery phase as Saturn enters a cardinal sign, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, and there tends to be more stability in the market. That's also usually the bottom of the market and the time that the market begins to rebuild. So we always get there. You can just look at the cycles just following Saturn. And there's a lot of other overlays with the other planets, but Saturn does seem to have such a massive sway over which way the Dow is working. So I think the markets will have some wild swings currently and through the next year of 2016. If you're conservative or an inexperienced investor, you should put your money in the safest possible investments. If you enjoy the volatility of the market and its ups and downs, this can be a real exciting year for you. If you're a long-term investor, it may be best just to keep your funds where they are until the market corrects itself and begins to move forward when Saturn enters Capricorn in December of 2017. Eventually, things will correct themselves and move back up, just like they always do. Because as Saturn moves out of Sagittarius, Neptune remains in Pisces, and she'll be there for a while longer, and that will help the market keep its upward moving energy. I would anticipate that the markets would be more in a downward phase, especially through the end of November, when Saturn squares Neptune exactly on Thanksgiving Day, and I mean November of 2015, this year. But as I said, I'm more concerned about the end of January, February, March, April, May as being time when the markets would be especially challenged and having difficulty recovering. I'll address more time to the Dow and what's going on over the next few months so we can get a good picture of what's happening with the Dow. So thank you for joining me this week, and I hope to have you join me next week, September the 13th through September the 19th, 2015. And of course, we all know this is the Lilly Roddy Show, coming to you from the LRS studios here in Houston, Texas, reminding you to keep those stars in your eyes. Bye-bye.